In the novel Fahrenheit 451, the main character's wife, Mildred, is the epitome of misery and hopelessness. So to cope with these feelings, she surrounds herself with constant noise. She always has multiple TV screens running and has earbuds in day and night. But despite these distractions, she can't seem to escape the impending doom that she constantly feels. In a way, I think we can all relate to Mildred. We try to block out the chaos of our world by filling our minds with constant noise and distraction. But does watching endless reels and surrounding ourselves with noise 24/7 actually give us peace? And does dodging the state of our lives and the world around us give us a solution and hope for the future? As much as we try to run from our problems, they catch up to us and circle back in the distractions that we create ourselves. Everyone should aim to spend a portion of the day in intentional silence, without any noise or distraction, because it can give you a new sense of hope and peace. Now, I'd be lying if I said that I haven't fallen victim to the coping mechanism of noise. I'll be the first to admit that I've spent countless days doom scrolling and listening to hours of music, or turning on a TV show while I work to ignore my stress or the state of my mind. But if I can recognize this problem while being complicit in it, I'm sure you'll be able to also. Today, I'd first like to discuss the problem of hopelessness in our society, next, the noise and distraction that causes it, and finally, how silence is the solution. I'd like to begin with the problem of hopelessness. There is a visible epidemic of hopelessness in our society today. In a 2011 article for Cross Currents, Notre Dame professor Sarah McMillan wrote that modern-day Americans lack hope in the future and meaning in their lives. This dilemma is so important and fundamental to the epidemic of hopelessness that we see today. We fill our time with scrolling, social media, movies, news, podcasts, you name it. And often, even if we don't recognize it, we're doing this to escape something else. Maybe it's reality. Maybe it's because we're stressed and we need an outlet. But how much is this noise really fixing our problems? We've all gotten stuck in the cycle of pessimism and hopelessness before. Maybe we've looked at the news and seen a tragedy or something that we heavily disagree with. And maybe from here, we go to a friend or family member and complain about the state of the world and how everything is just going to shambles. Or maybe we turn on a podcast or our favorite sad song and go further down the rabbit hole. We can all recognize that this is not a healthy cycle. We take the state of our world, feel hopeless about it, and then feed that hopelessness with more noise and distraction. We are using the world to escape from the world. In a research article published in 2015 for the Journal of Psychological Science, Wellesley professor Catherine Curran and associates concluded that negative experiences and emotions are seen as inevitable elements of the natural cycle of humanity, and counterintuitively, unite people under pessimism. Our culture has become united by this despair. We fill our time with talking about the problems of the world and believing that all these things are inevitable. But while it may be inevitable that we'll encounter difficulties and disappointments, it is not inevitable that we're subject to the rabbit hole of hopelessness every time. Now that we've examined the problem of hopelessness in our society, I want to talk about the cause. The cause of hopelessness in our society is due to the constant noise that we surround ourselves with. In a 1992 study on anxiety and susceptibility to distraction for the Personality and Individual Differences Journal, British academic psychologist Michael Einsank found that high anxiety individuals are generally more susceptible to distraction than those with lower anxiety, especially when that distraction is posed as a threat. So you may be thinking, how does this apply to noise and hopelessness? Well, as I'm sure we can all recognize, hopelessness is commonly associated with mental disorders like anxiety and depression. When we feel hopeless about the state of the world or our own lives, we fall subject to anxiety and uncertainty. And this is where the study comes in. High anxiety levels make people more susceptible and reliant on distractions to escape their own reality. When we feel hopeless and anxious, we resort to distractions like social media, movies, music, and podcasts. And this gets us caught in an endless cycle. In a 2024 article for Medium on the value of silence, personal growth writer Dan Peterson said that we are afraid of silence because we equate silence with insignificance. We constantly want to be heard, seen, or looking towards the future. We fear silence because that means facing how small we really are in this world and how little of an influence we have in the big scope of things. But rather than this being something dreadful and hopeless, why don't we look at it from a different perspective? We can't change a lot in this world, at least on a big scale. So rather than focusing on these major hopeless problems, let's focus on what we can control. Now, I'm not saying to completely disconnect from the world because your actions have no meaning, because they definitely do. Rather, I'm saying that there is peace and hope in recognizing that you are in control of your own actions and can determine your response. Terrible and hopeless things may happen, but we have the choice to either respond with distraction and despair or work with what we have and redirect our course. Now that I've fleshed out why this is the cause of hopelessness, let's look at a potential solution. Everyone should aim to spend a portion of the day in intentional silence, without any noise or distractions, because it can give you a new sense of hope and peace. In a 2002 article on the value of silence for the Theater Journal, Rutgers professor David Eng stated that silence is not the opposition of speech, but its very condition of possibility, the precondition of knowing and meaning. In silence, we can find truths about the world and ourselves that we didn't recognize before because we were so overwhelmed with noise. When we learn how to be intentionally silent, we find peace in using that time for honest reflection without outside distraction. Sarah Monk, who holds a Master in Psychology from the University of Surrey, stated in a 2018 article for the Positive Psychology People that silence is a place of paradox where we can hear our heart because we finally quiet our chaotic consciousness. We need to learn how to work with the silence in our lives because in that silence, we can find more peace and hope than anywhere else. Now, I'm not asking you to sit in silence for hours or reach a state of nirvana. Start with 10 or 15 minutes. Sit, put your phone across the room, and try to limit your distractions as much as you can. For example, you could just focus on your breathing or think about counting to 10. If this isn't even feasible, try to go on a walk with no music and just listen to nature around you. Famed writer and apologist C.S. Lewis was a huge advocate for nature walks because he frequently attributed his creative process to it. The world on our phone is chaotic and twisted to fit a certain agenda, so it's time to get out of the media and experience true silence. You'd be surprised at how fast you'd start feeling peace because you finally have a moment to slow down and think rationally without any outside influence or anxiety-inducing distractions. After hearing about the connections between noise, distraction, and hopelessness, I hope you'll consider implementing a few moments of silence into your day. Today, I first talked about the problem of hopelessness in our society. Second, how this is caused by the constant noise that we surround ourselves with. And finally, some solutions. If you aim to spend even just a moment of silence intentional silence in your day, I can guarantee that you will eventually find a new sense of hope and peace. At the beginning of this speech, I talked about how Mildred in Fahrenheit 451 tried to cope with her feelings of misery and hopelessness by filling her life with constant noise and distraction. So if this noise and distraction couldn't save her, maybe we can learn from her and try a different approach. Try a few moments of silence every day and see how you exponentially regain your hope. Thank you.